I never planned on falling in love on a Tuesday night, but that's exactly when my whole life changed. My name is Ethan Cole, and I work as a project manager at Harrington Group, a company most people in this city only dream of getting hired by. I'm 29, I keep my head down, and I don't get involved in office gossip. That's why I still don't understand how I ended up carrying a stranger out of a bar at midnight. I'd stop by Renner's, a quiet place near my apartment, just to grab a drink after a brutal week. That's when I saw her. A woman sitting alone at the end of the bar, her dress a deep red, her dark hair falling loose around her face, a half-empty glass in front of her, and 3 more already gone. She wasn't loud. She wasn't causing a scene. She just looked lost, like she was trying to disappear into the noise around her. Then she stood up too fast and nearly hit the floor. I caught her before she did. Her whole body leaned into me, and for a second, she looked up with glassy eyes and whispered, "You smell like safety." I didn't know what that meant, but something about the way she said it cracked something open in my chest. I couldn't just leave her there. I asked the bartender if he knew her. He shrugged and said she comes in sometimes, always alone, never says much. I looked at her phone, hoping for an emergency contact, but the screen was locked. So I did the only thing that made sense. I called a cab, helped her in, and told the driver my address because I had no idea where she lived, and I wasn't about to leave a barely conscious woman alone in the back of a stranger's car. She fell asleep on my shoulder during the ride, her hand curled loosely around my arm like she trusted me, without even knowing my name. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not attraction exactly. Something deeper. Something that scared me. At my apartment, I laid her on my couch, got her a glass of water, and sat in the chair across from her, watching the rise and fall of her breathing, wondering who she was and why she looked so sad, even while unconscious. She woke up around 3 in the morning, panicked until she saw my face and calmed down. She told me her name was Ava. Just Ava. No last name. She thanked me quietly, then asked if she could stay until sunrise because she wasn't ready to go home yet. I said yes without thinking twice. We talked until the sky turned gray outside my window. She told me she felt like a stranger in her own life. I told her about my mother, about losing her when I was 17, about how I built walls so thick nobody could get close enough to hurt me again. She listened like she actually understood, like my pain made sense to her in a way no one else's ever had. When morning came, she left in a hurry, thanking me again, disappearing before I could even get her number. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I'd never see her again. I was wrong. 3 days later, I walked into a boardroom for a company-wide meeting, and there she was standing beside our CEO, Richard Harrington, the man who built this entire company from nothing. He introduced her as his daughter, Ava Harrington, recently returned from working overseas, now joining the executive team to learn the business from the inside. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. She looked at me across that room, and for one terrifying second, I saw the same panic in her eyes that I felt in my chest. Neither of us said a word about that night. We just stood there, pretending to be strangers, while every memory of her hand on my arm and her whisper about feeling safe burned through my mind like fire. After the meeting, she found me alone near the elevators. She grabbed my arm and pulled me into an empty hallway, her voice sharp and urgent. "Nobody can know," she said. "Not what happened. Not any of it." I told her I understood, even though understanding had nothing to do with the way my heart was pounding just from being close to her again. She started to walk away, then stopped and turned back. Her eyes softened for just a moment, the same look she gave me on my couch at 3 in the morning. "Thank you for that night," she whispered. "Nobody's ever made me feel that safe before." Then she disappeared down the hallway, leaving me standing there, staring after the one woman in the world I now had every reason to stay away from, and somehow every reason to never let go. If you think it's easy to forget someone after they whisper that you make them feel safe, you've never met Ava Harrington. Weeks passed after that hallway conversation, and I told myself over and over to keep my distance. She was my boss's daughter. She was off limits in every way that mattered. But fate seemed determined to prove me wrong. Ava started showing up in every meeting connected to my projects. Her father wanted her learning operations firsthand, which meant learning them from me. We spent long hours, reviewing reports, sitting close together over spreadsheets, pretending the air between us wasn't thick with everything we weren't saying. One night, working late on a deadline, she finally broke the silence neither of us could keep pretending was normal. She looked up from her laptop and asked why I never brought up that night at Renner's. I told her the truth. I said I thought about it every single day, but I respected her enough not to make things complicated for her. She laughed softly, though it didn't sound happy. Complicated, she repeated. You have no idea. She told me pieces of her past that night. She said she left the country 3 years ago to escape a life that felt like a cage built by her father's expectations. She said she came back because he was sick, though he hid it well, and she felt guilty for staying away so long. She said the drinking that night wasn't random. It was the anniversary of her mother's death, a loss her father never let her properly grieve. Something about her honesty pulled me in deeper than I ever expected. I reached across the table and took her hand, and she didn't pull away. For a moment, neither of us breathed. Then she leaned in, and I met her halfway, and we kissed like two people who had been drowning and just found air. We tried to keep it secret. We really did. Late dinners in quiet corners of the city. Stolen moments in stairwells. Text messages sent after midnight that said nothing important but meant everything. I had never felt so alive and so terrified at the same time. Loving her felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing one wrong step could destroy everything I'd built. Then Marcus Vale showed up. Marcus was an old family friend, someone her father trusted completely, charming in a way that made everyone in the room lean toward him without realizing it. He'd known Ava since childhood, and it was obvious from the way he looked at her that his feelings ran deeper than friendship. Richard practically pushed them together at every company function, clearly hoping history would repeat itself into something permanent. I hated watching it happen. I hated the easy way Marcus touched her arm, the confident way he assumed his place beside her at dinners I wasn't invited to. Jealousy clawed through my chest every time I saw them together. And worse, I started to notice Ava pulling away from me whenever Marcus was near, like she was performing a role she didn't choose but couldn't escape. One night, I confronted her about it in the parking garage after work. I asked if she had feelings for him. She said no, that Marcus was just familiar, safe in a different way than I was, a way tied to family and expectation rather than truth. But I couldn't shake the fear building inside me. I told her I couldn't keep hiding, couldn't keep pretending. I didn't want the whole world to know she was mine. She grabbed my face in both hands and told me she loved me. Actual words, not just stolen glances or quiet touches. She said it terrified her more than anything else in her life, because loving me meant risking everything her father had built for her, everything he expected her to become. Then everything shattered. Richard called me into his office 2 days later, his face carved from stone. Someone had told him. Someone had shown him photos of Ava and me together outside a restaurant, wrapped in each other like we didn't care who saw. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. He simply told me that if I valued my career and if I valued Ava's future, I would end things immediately and never speak to her again. I walked out of that office feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath me. When I found Ava outside, her eyes already red from crying, she told me her father gave her the same ultimatum. Choose me and lose everything. Choose her family and lose me. Behind her, standing in the doorway with a look of quiet satisfaction he didn't bother hiding, stood Marcus, watching our whole world collapse like he'd been waiting for this moment all along. Betrayal has a way of making even the strongest love feel impossible. And standing in that parking lot watching Marcus smile while our world fell apart, I understood exactly how deep this went. Ava wouldn't look at me. She just kept staring at the ground, tears falling silently, like she already knew what she had to do. She told me she needed time. She needed to figure out how to face her father without losing him completely, especially now that she knew how sick he really was. I wanted to fight for her right there, but something in her eyes told me fighting wasn't what she needed in that moment. So I let her go, even though every part of me screamed not to. The weeks that followed were the darkest of my life. Richard moved me off every project connected to Ava. Rumors spread through the office like wildfire, twisted and cruel, painting me as some kind of predator who chased after his boss's daughter for money or status. Marcus made sure those rumors reached the right ears, always with a concerned expression, always pretending he was only looking out for the family. I barely saw Ava during that time. When I did, she was always beside Marcus at some company event, smiling in a way that never reached her eyes. I told myself she was protecting herself. I told myself this wasn't really happening. But watching her hand rest in his at a charity dinner nearly broke something inside me I wasn't sure could be fixed. Then the real storm hit. Richard's health took a sudden, terrifying turn. He collapsed at the office and was rushed to the hospital. And suddenly the company was thrown into chaos over who would take control while he recovered. Marcus saw his opening immediately. He pushed hard for the board to name him temporary head of operations, using his closeness to the family as leverage, painting himself as the stable choice compared to me, the outsider who'd caused nothing but scandal. During a tense board meeting, Marcus dropped a bombshell nobody saw coming. He claimed he had proof I'd been feeding confidential company information to a rival firm, using my relationship with Ava to gain access to sensitive documents. The room erupted. I sat there stunned, completely blindsided, because none of it was true, not a single word. I looked at Ava across that room, desperate for her to believe me. For one agonizing second, I saw doubt flicker across her face, and that doubt hurt worse than any accusation Marcus could throw at me. She didn't defend me. She didn't attack me either. She just sat frozen, caught between the man she loved and the family she was terrified of losing completely. I was suspended pending investigation. My reputation, something I'd spent years building brick by brick, crumbled overnight. I went home that night and sat alone in my apartment, staring at the same couch where Ava once slept peacefully under my watch, wondering how something that started so pure had turned into this nightmare. Days later, Ava showed up at my door, soaked from the rain, mascara streaked down her face. She said she couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't stop thinking about the look on my face when she failed to defend me. She said she'd been going through old company emails, try to find something, anything, to clear my name because deep down she never actually believed the accusations. She just froze under the pressure of losing her father's approval on top of everything else. That night, going through printed records she'd taken from the office, we found it. An email chain between Marcus and a rival executive, dated weeks before the accusation, discussing a plan to discredit me and clear his own path toward controlling Harrington Group. Marcus hadn't just lied about me. He'd been planning this takeover long before Ava and I ever got involved. Ava's hands shook as she read it again and again, horrified that someone she'd trusted her whole life had used her father's illness, used our love, as pawns in his own selfish game. She looked up at me, eyes full of tears and something fierce I hadn't seen in weeks. She said she was done being afraid. She said she was done letting other people decide who she was allowed to love. Then she told me the truth would come out, no matter what it cost her, because losing me had taught her that some things matter more than approval, more than safety, more than the fear that had controlled her entire life. She reached for my hand, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself believe we might actually survive this. Truth has a way of finding daylight, even after it's been buried under lies for weeks. And the moment Ava walked into that emergency board meeting with printed proof in her shaking hands, I knew everything was about to change. Her father, still recovering but strong enough to attend, sat at the head of the table, watching his daughter with an expression I couldn't quite read. Ava didn't hesitate. She laid the emails on the table in front of everyone, her voice steady even though I could see her fighting back tears. She explained everything. Marcus's plan to discredit me, his manipulation of the accusations, his years of quietly positioning himself to take over everything her father built, using their family closeness as a mask for ambition that had nothing to do with loyalty. Marcus tried to deny it at first, laughing it off, calling it fabricated nonsense meant to protect a relationship that never should have happened. But when Richard asked to see the original email server logs that couldn't be faked or deleted without leaving a trace, Marcus's confident smile finally cracked. The room went dead silent as the truth settled over everyone like a heavy fog lifting to reveal exactly what had been hiding underneath. Richard stood up slowly, his eyes locked on the man he'd trusted like family for over a decade. He told Marcus, in a voice quiet but sharp as broken glass, that he was finished, both at the company and in their lives. Security escorted Marcus out of the building that same afternoon, his reputation collapsing just as quickly as mine had weeks before, except this time, it was built on truth instead of lies. After the meeting cleared, Richard asked me to stay behind. I braced myself, expecting more anger, more warnings to stay away from his daughter forever. Instead, he apologized. He said fear for Ava's future made him blind to what was actually happening, and that watching her fight so hard to clear my name showed him something he should have seen from the very beginning. He said real love doesn't hide when things get hard. It shows up, even when it's terrifying. He looked at Ava, standing quietly beside me, and told her he was sorry for making her feel like she had to choose between his approval and her own happiness. He said her mother would have been furious with him for putting her through that. Ava's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in weeks, they were tears that came from relief instead of pain. That evening, Ava and I walked along the river near the office, the city lights reflecting off the water like scattered stars. She stopped walking and turned to face me, her hand still trembling slightly from everything the day had brought. She told me she was done being afraid of what people thought, done letting other people write the story of her life. She said the night I carried her out of that bar, something in her recognized me before she even knew my name, like some part of her had been waiting for exactly this kind of love her whole life. I told her the truth, too. I told her that loving her scared me more than anything ever had, because losing my mother taught me that love always comes with the risk of loss. But watching her fight for me, watching her choose truth over safety, showed me that some risks are worth taking no matter how much they terrify you. I got down on one knee right there by the river, no ring prepared, no grand plan, just raw honesty pouring out of me faster than I could organize it into something polished. I told her I didn't need a perfect proposal to know I wanted to spend every difficult, beautiful day of my life fighting for her, standing beside her, choosing her again and again, no matter what storms came next. She laughed through her tears and pulled me up before I could finish, wrapping her arms around my neck, whispering that her answer was yes, that it had been yes since the moment she woke up on my couch and realized safety wasn't a place, it was a person. Months later, we stood together at Harrington Group's anniversary gala, no longer hiding, no longer whispering in hallways or stealing glances across boardrooms. Richard toasted our engagement in front of the entire company, calling it proof that sometimes the best partnerships in life have nothing to do with business at all. As the music played and the lights glowed warm around us, Ava rested her head against my shoulder the same way she had that very first night, except this time there was nothing to hide, nothing to fear, only the quiet certainty that we had fought through fire and come out the other side, still holding on to each other, exactly where we were always meant to be.